They say money changes people, but I don't believe that anymore. I think money just shows who people really are. When Mom died, I thought my sister and I would lean on each other, honor her memory, and share the life she left us. Instead, she smiled sweetly, held my hand at the funeral, and then took everything behind my back: the house, the savings, even Mom's jewelry box. She thought I would stay silent. She thought I was too soft. But she didn't know I was ready to fight back. When Mom passed away, the world seemed to stop spinning for me. It wasn't sudden. Her health had been declining for months. But even when you expect it, you're never ready. I remember walking through her quiet house after the funeral, hearing nothing but the old clock ticking in the hallway. Her favorite teacup was still sitting by her chair, with a faint ring of tea dried at the bottom, like she'd just stepped out of the room for a moment. The cardigan she always wore was draped over the couch. Even her glasses rested on the table, folded neatly as if she'd be back to pick them up. My sister arrived for the funeral dressed to perfection: a sleek black dress, polished shoes, pearls at her neck. She cried the loudest, hugging people dramatically, letting them console her. To the outside world, she looked like the dutiful daughter, heartbroken and devastated. I didn't care how I looked. I stood quietly, hands folded, my grief sitting heavy in my chest like a stone. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to bury my mother. After the funeral, the lawyer asked us to meet at his office for the will reading. I didn't expect much. Mom wasn't wealthy, but she had worked hard her whole life, saved what she could, and she had the little house that meant everything to us. I thought Mom would want us to share. She always said, "Fairness keeps families together. I don't want you girls to ever fight when I'm gone." The office was small and dim, filled with the scent of old paper and coffee. A mahogany table stood in the center, stacks of folders piled neatly at the edges. My sister and I sat across from each other, the air between us heavy. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. His voice was calm, professional, but the words pierced through me like knives. According to the will, this most recent version signed only 6 months earlier, everything was left to my sister: the house, the savings, even Mom's jewelry box with the sapphire ring she had once promised to me. I blinked, sure I misheard. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The lawyer shook his head. "This is the valid, most recent document, dated and signed by your mother herself, 6 months ago." I remembered Mom's hands trembling so badly she could hardly write her grocery list. I remembered holding her pen steady so she could sign a check. And yet, according to this paper, she had signed over her entire life's work to my sister. I turned to look at her, searching her face for some hint of truth, of fairness, but she didn't meet my eyes. She just smoothed her skirt and said softly, "It was Mom's decision. I didn't push her." My stomach knotted. I could feel the blood draining from my face. This wasn't Mom's voice. This wasn't her sense of fairness. This was manipulation, quiet, deliberate manipulation. I left that office in a haze. The lawyer's words blurred into background noise as I walked out. My sister called after me, her tone almost smug. "We can work something out. Don't be upset. Don't be upset." She had just taken everything Mom had built, everything I thought we'd share, and she told me not to be upset. When I got home, I sat in the silence of my living room, the weight of betrayal pressing down harder than grief ever could. I wasn't just mourning my mother anymore. I was mourning the sister I thought I had. The days after the will reading blurred together, like living under a fog that never lifted. Grief already weighs you down, but betrayal presses into your chest until you can hardly breathe. I tried to go back to my routine. I got up, made coffee, watered my plants, and pretended life was moving on. But every quiet moment was filled with anger. Every time I walked past Mom's photo on the mantel, I thought about her promise: "You girls will share everything." And then I thought about my sister's face in that lawyer's office, her eyes darting away, her voice calm, rehearsed. It played on repeat in my mind, like a cruel song I couldn't turn off. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. I replayed every sacrifice I'd made, every ride to the doctor's office, every evening I cooked dinner when Mom was too weak, every bill I quietly paid so she wouldn't stress. I hadn't done those things for inheritance. I had done them out of love. But knowing Mom's years of gratitude had been erased, twisted into something my sister used to her advantage, made my stomach twist in knots. Friends tried to comfort me. They said, "It's just money. Don't let it ruin your family." But they didn't understand. It wasn't about money. It was about respect, about dignity, about truth. Mom wasn't the kind of woman to reward distance over devotion. She wasn't the kind of mother who would overlook the child who sat by her bedside for the one who dropped in for holidays and birthday phone calls. One afternoon, my sister left a voicemail on my phone. Her voice was sticky sweet, the way it always was when she wanted something. We should get together soon. Maybe go through Mom's things, decide what to keep, what to donate. Her words hit me like acid. Go through Mom's things? As if there were anything left to divide. She had already taken everything. Legally, financially, emotionally. The nerve to ask me to help her decide which memories she wanted to keep? It made my skin crawl. I didn't call back. Not then, not the next week, not the week after. The silence became my shield, but silence has a way of making room for thought. And the longer I stayed quiet, the clearer my mind became. I thought about how my sister had always been. Charming, polished, the favorite in public. And me? I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who held everything together in the background. People like me get overlooked. Until one day, we don't. The more I reflected, the less I felt like a victim, and the more I felt something else, resolve. Not revenge in the fiery sense, not rage, something steadier, firmer. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to tear apart what family ties were left by throwing accusations without proof. No, I was going to be patient. I was going to gather the truth, because if my sister thought she could manipulate Mom into rewriting her will, then she underestimated me. She underestimated the woman who had been there for every doctor's appointment, every long night, every moment of weakness. She forgot that I had witnessed the truth firsthand. It wasn't about stealing anything back. It was about restoring balance. And deep down, I knew that one day, the truth would have to speak louder than her lies. One afternoon, I found myself back at Mom's house. The place still smelled faintly of lavender, her favorite soap. Dust was starting to settle, but her presence lingered in every corner. It was both comforting and painful, like being wrapped in a memory you couldn't escape. I sat in her bedroom, staring at the floral wallpaper she'd chosen decades ago. That's when I remembered the shoebox. Mom always kept an old shoebox under her bed, labeled important papers. She told me once, half joking, "If anything ever happens, you'll know where to look." I pulled it out, my hands trembling. Inside, tucked between old tax forms and faded photographs, were earlier versions of her will. I flipped through them carefully, one from 10 years ago, another from 5. Each one said the same thing. Everything split evenly between her daughters. 50-50. Fair. Balanced. Exactly the way Mom always preached. Then I pulled out the most recent will, the one my sister had flaunted. I set it side by side with the older ones. The difference nearly made me gasp. The old signatures were strong, steady. Mom had beautiful handwriting, the kind you don't see anymore. Loops and flourishes, neat and proud. But the new one? It was shaky, uneven. The pen pressure looked wrong. It didn't look like her hand. It looked like her hand had been guided. My stomach turned. Guided. Like someone had held her wrist. The thought chilled me. Would my sister really stoop that low? Would she take advantage of Mom's weakness to carve me out of the picture? I needed to be sure. So I made an appointment with a handwriting expert. She examined the documents with a magnifying glass, tracing every stroke. Finally, she looked up and said what I already knew in my gut. This last signature, it doesn't look natural. It looks assisted. See here, the hesitation marks and the uneven slant? That suggests someone helped guide her hand. Hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. My suspicions weren't paranoia. They were real. I drove home that night with a new fire in my heart. I pulled out boxes of receipts I'd kept. Gas money from driving Mom to appointments, prescriptions I'd picked up, utility bills I'd paid when her checks didn't stretch far enough. I gathered text messages, notes she had written thanking me for always being here. It wasn't about proving I deserved more. It was about showing I had been there, that I hadn't abandoned her, that her real wish had always been for fairness. Piece by piece, I built a story. Not a story of greed, but of truth. And as the evidence piled up on my kitchen table, I realized I wasn't powerless anymore. For the first time since that lawyer's office, I felt steady. I felt like Mom was sitting beside me, whispering, "Don't let her erase you." The next morning, I picked up the phone and called a lawyer of my own. My hands shook as I dialed, but my voice was calm when he answered. "I need to contest a will," I said. And just like that, the quiet sister, the one who always stayed in the shadows, had stepped into the light. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant, the kind of place where echoes seemed to linger longer than they should. I had never been inside a courtroom before, never needed to, but now every step I took down that aisle felt heavier than the last. My sister was already there, perfectly dressed, her hair immaculate, her lawyer whispering into her ear like a snake. She didn't look at me, not once. It was as if I wasn't even in the room. Maybe that was easier for her. Pretend I didn't exist. When the judge entered, the entire room shifted. Everyone stood, then sat again. My hands clenched in my lap. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the whole room could hear it. Her lawyer went first. He painted me as the bitter sibling. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "this is simply a case of jealousy. My client was always closer to their mother. It was her dying wish to reward that bond. This contest is nothing more than resentment." I bit the inside of my cheek. Resentment? If only he knew the nights I spent sleeping on Mom's couch when she couldn't be alone. If only he knew the miles I drove, the hours I worked, the sacrifices I made. Then it was my turn. My lawyer nodded at me, and I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice came out steady. "Your Honor," I began, "I am not here out of greed. I am here because I knew my mother. I knew her values, and I know this last will does not represent her heart." I told them about the doctor's visits, the endless nights, the meals cooked with love. I told them how Mom always said she wanted fairness, how she would never pit one daughter against the other. Then my lawyer presented the evidence. He placed the earlier wills on the stand, side by side with the contested one. The handwriting expert testified, pointing out the hesitation marks, the unnatural slants. The courtroom was silent. You could hear the scratch of her pen as she circled the inconsistencies on the projection screen. "Guided signature," she said firmly. "Not natural." I stole a glance at my sister. For the first time, she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her confident mask cracked ever so slightly. Then came the testimonies. Mom's neighbors spoke about how often they saw me by her side. One even said, if it weren't for her, their mother would have struggled much more. She was there every day. The other daughter, well, not so much. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, not from shame, but from validation. Finally, someone was saying aloud what I had lived for years. My sister's lawyer tried to push back. He asked the handwriting expert if stress or illness could make signatures look strange. She admitted it could, but not like this. Not with this pattern of guidance. He asked the neighbors if they might be biased. They shrugged. Maybe, but we saw what we saw. By the time both sides rested, I could see it in the judge's eyes. He had heard enough. When he finally spoke, the words felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. "This court finds sufficient evidence to invalidate the most recent will. The estate will be divided evenly, as per the previous documents." For a moment, I sat frozen. Did I hear that right? Evenly? Fairly? Just as Mom had always intended? Relief rushed through me, so strong it brought tears to my eyes. I glanced at my sister. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. She whispered something furious to her lawyer, but it was too late. Justice had spoken. As I left the courtroom, the air outside felt different, lighter, brighter. The weight I had carried since that lawyer's office months ago finally lifted. I hadn't just won a case. I had reclaimed my mother's voice. After the ruling, the courthouse emptied quickly. Lawyers packed up their briefcases, people shuffled out, and soon it was just me, standing in the hallway, breathing deeper than I had in months. The air felt different, lighter. For the first time since Mom's passing, I felt like she had been heard, like her true voice had been restored. But victories, even just ones, don't erase the pain. A few days later, my sister came to my door. I saw her car pull up through the window, shiny as always. She stepped out briskly, her heels clicking against the pavement, her face tight with anger. I knew before she even knocked that this visit wasn't about reconciliation. When I opened the door, she didn't waste time with greetings. "You embarrassed me," she snapped. Her voice dripped with fury. "You made me look like a thief in front of everyone. Do you realize what you've done?" I stared at her for a long moment, studying her face. The same face I'd grown up with, the face I once trusted, the face I thought I'd lean on when Mom was gone, but all I saw now was entitlement. "I didn't make you look like anything," I said quietly. "You did that all on your own." She crossed her arms. "You've ruined everything, the money, the house. It was supposed to be mine. Mom wanted it that way." I shook my head slowly. "No, Mom wanted fairness. She wanted peace. What you did, that was about control, about greed. And I couldn't let her legacy be twisted like that." Her eyes narrowed, filling with something that looked almost like guilt, but she masked it quickly with anger. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Then she turned, slammed her car door, and drove away. I stood there in the quiet, my hand still on the doorknob. A strange mix of sadness and relief washed over me. I knew that moment might be the last time we spoke as sisters, maybe forever. And yet I didn't regret it. In the weeks that followed, life slowly settled. The house and assets were divided fairly, just as they should have been from the start. I spent time going through Mom's belongings, carefully folding her clothes, opening boxes of old photographs, letting memories wash over me like waves. Sometimes I laughed, sometimes I cried, but for the first time I felt like I was honoring her properly, not by holding onto bitterness, but by holding onto truth. Family members had opinions, of course. Some whispered that I was too harsh. Others quietly admitted they were proud of me for standing up. I learned something then. People will always talk, always judge. But at the end of the day, only you live with the choices you make. And the choice I made was to protect Mom's voice, to protect myself. Because here's what I finally understood. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Family isn't a free pass to walk all over someone. And love, real love, doesn't mean staying silent when you've been wronged. For most of my life, I had been the quiet one, the one who kept the peace, even if it meant swallowing my pride. But that quiet girl, she was gone. I wasn't afraid to stand tall anymore. I wasn't afraid to demand fairness. And as painful as it was, maybe that was Mom's final gift to me. To teach me that my voice mattered, that my worth didn't shrink just because someone tried to erase it. In the end, my sister lost more than half of an inheritance. She lost my trust. She lost the bond we once had, and maybe she doesn't realize it yet, but that is the true cost of betrayal, far higher than money. And me? I walked away, not just with my share, but with something far greater, the strength of knowing I could fight for myself and win. Revenge isn't always about screaming or slamming doors or getting even in ways people expect. Sometimes it's about restoring balance. My sister thought she could erase me from Mom's legacy. She thought I'd stay quiet, like I always had, and let her rewrite the story. But she underestimated me. I didn't fight for money. I fought for dignity, for fairness, for the truth of who my mother really was. And in the end, that truth prevailed. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, remember this. Silence doesn't protect you. Sometimes the greatest act of love, for yourself and for the ones who raised you, is standing tall, speaking out, and refusing to be erased.